Well, good morning everyone and welcome to Car Stereo Lab. Today, we've got a fun one. iData came out with their Camaro kit, this guy right here. We got a 996XR. We're gonna put these in, guess what?
In the Camaro.
That's right, naturally, because it's a Camaro kit. So join us today as we show you how to put this kit in your Camaro. So one of the features that makes iData extremely cool is the ability to do things such as retain factory features back into your aftermarket radio. Air conditioning controls, tire pressure, basic functionality. When you replace the radio, might not get to retain. With the iData, it just moves it into a menu structure that you go into and you can adjust. Now this kit is a little bit different than other manufacturers' kits, so let's open this thing up and take a look at it and let's talk about it. Earlier last year, they showed us a prototype of this kit, and it was just a picture, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. Then I actually got to see a sample one, and I was like, ooh, wait a minute, this might be cool. One of the features that sets the Camaro apart is it's got those big dials, and that's nice. But another thing that it has is these really sharp buttons that have a silver trim between them, as well as a black piece across the top that's the radio screen. All the kits up to this point, you got the knobs, but you lost those cool buttons and the two-tone kit. Not with this one. So if you have a Camaro or you've seen the Camaro dash, this top portion here is where the display is, and it is definitely two-tone. And to me, it's one of the features on the radio that really kind of makes it look really nice. Although I do like the big air conditioner knobs, this is a nice, simple, clean look. And it brings the dash kit up and away from the little gauge cluster that sits underneath it. Now down here, they've gone ahead and they've put two USBs, an HDMI, and an aux jack, so you have full accessibility. But up here, they've retained the factory look and feel of the buttons and added in the cool little silver divider that the factory has. Now once we get the dash kit out of the car, we'll go ahead and put a side-by-side comparison and take a look at it. But first, let's see what comes in this box. Obviously the main trim bezel comes in the box. And as you can see on the back side here, these are your USBs on the outside, your HDMI, and your aux jack. You also get a white box inside of it. Inside that is going to be your left and right mounting brackets. And they're made out of metal. Your speaker for door chimes and OnStar if you're going to retain them. Bag of screws. And of course the main wiring harness. Now what is not in the box is this guy right here, which is the RR. You are going to need an RR in order for this to work. This is going to be the brain module for this whole thing, and that's what makes it all work. And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we get to it. For the harness that it comes with, you have an OBD2 adapter. If it has a factory backup camera, you have the retention for that. You have the resistors for if you have the Boston Acoustic amplified system, so that you can take the high level out of the radio and convert it down to line level, as well as the main plug here. Now naturally what we want to do is go ahead and get the car, get it all taken apart. So looking at the factory radio, this is that black spot I was talking about. We'll take it over to the bench once we get it out and do a close-up comparison. This is an automatic. It has the 4 cluster here. There's a cigarette lighter located right on this side. You're going to be removing this silver panel and pulling it out. And when you do that, that cigarette lighter is going to want to scratch the top of this. I strongly recommend getting yourself a roll of blue tape and taping the front of this area here to prevent that from happening. You're going to want to do 2 layers. That will keep this nice and secure. The other area that's going to be affected is going to be up here in the dash. These spots right here. They love to get scratched up when you're pulling this in and out. A little blue tape there will go a long way. Now if you armor roll your car, this blue tape isn't going to stick, so just be real careful with that. Now what we want to do is go ahead and lift this out of place. To do that, we're going to put it in gear, grab ourselves a panel tool, pull it forward carefully, and just kind of turn it to where you can get to the clip in the back, and then just set that aside once you get that unplugged. Now according to the instructions, what they'd like you to do is if you have the gear shifter that has the spine here that you can remove, you can pull the torque screw here, and then you can unscrew these, and then this whole piece will come up. And then there's screws here and on the other side over there, as well as screws back here behind this panel. Once you pull those screws, these instructions here are showing you, you can lift this whole thing up and back, and what that's going to do is that's going to expose the screws that go here and there. We've already had a couple kits in here and put put a couple radios in here, as you guys know. So we did it a little bit differently because we had to be able to access that dash kit a lot easier. Not saying you can do this, but this is what we did. So we trimmed along here and then up along here and there and remove that little piece of plastic out of the way, which gave us access to those two screws. And like I said, we've pulled this thing out dozens of times. And once you remove those two screws, then all you have to do, grab here around the two handles and just pull forward. Now there is one plug behind it. You can go ahead and unplug that one guy there, and now your radio bezel is out. To get this guy out, 4 screws around the sides here that are 7mm, as well as the 2 screws in the bottom are also 7mm. Put your hand on the back side of it like this, tilt it sideways, and unplug everything. On the back of this particular unit, it has the one main power plug, the antenna, and the Sirius XM. Let's head over to the bench real quick, and we'll take a look at the 2 dash bezels next to one another. Looking at the factory bezel, you can see these buttons right here with the silver. They're there for a reason. It's so that you hit the dedicated button you're aiming for. And it's also like that on lock and lock, so you don't accidentally hit the hazard switch. You just hit lock and unlock. But it has these, it's got the two-tone, it looks really nice. And the way this is designed, these are tucked up in tight to this. We can compare the two side by side. As you can see, they're about the same depth. They tuck in really nice. And you have that top shiny black piece, and then you have the silver buttons to match. Now as far as color goes, color is spot on. Let's talk about the RR, the main brain for the system, for a moment. When you open it up, inside you're going to find some instructions. They call it a quick start guide. It's going to explain to you what you're going to need to do in order to program this, because this is a universal box, meaning it works on all the things that an RR is capable of controlling. So you have to program it to your vehicle. So there's a 6-step process in order to get all this onto here. Step 1 is of course going out to their website, iDataLink Maestro.com/plugin, filling out the information and downloading it to your computer, so that you can then log in and program this. Once you have the software uploaded in your computer and you've gone ahead and plugged in the module and logged in, select Flash by Device, select Year, Make, and Model. They're going to give you an image of what the steering wheel is going to look like. Pick the one that best represents your car. It's this one. Select your brand radio, select your model radio, or enter it in. Then it's going to ask you for the serial number. Now the serial number is very important. On the side of a box it's going to have a serial number somewhere. This step is crucial. This allows them, if you ever have any service or anything like that, they can use your serial number and or your login information to go back and see what you've done if you need to call them for tech support. It also has to match, meaning this serial number on this box has to match the one in the radio. So if you ever have an issue where the two aren't jiving, sometimes, let's say if it's a refurbished radio or something like that, the serial number on the box might not necessarily match the serial number in the radio, in which case you can go into the radio settings and find that serial number. For this case, brand new radio, we're just going to type in the number. Select yes. For this one, we're doing this dash kit, so we're going to go ahead and select continue. Now we have a bunch of questions. We want to carefully read these and answer them appropriately. First one is parking assist, yes. We want gauges. Does it have the factory amplifier? There's a question mark. If the vehicle is equipped with a premium amplified audio system and you are planning to replace the factory amplifier with an aftermarket one, you must clear this checkbox for the fader and balance to work. We're going to end up doing that, so we want to make sure we turn this off. Now if you have a factory amplifier or a non-factory amplified system, go ahead and leave that on. We don't have a factory camera, we're not installing a radar detector. Secondary display if equipped, we'll go ahead and leave that on. Vehicle information, steering wheel controls, USB media player, climate controls, and we don't use OnStar. Continue. Next up is going to be our steering wheel control mapping. Now for the most part, this has everything that you could possibly want. You have your volume up and down. If you press and hold volume down, it's going to go ahead and mute it. Track up, track down, next source. Then you have voice is going to be Siri, and then they've made answer and hang up all one button. On top of the radio here, you have this button that says 1, 2, 3, and 4. These buttons can be programmed. If you want to have quick access to something, you can program them for that. There again, you don't have to program for anything. What you can't do is reprogram the ones that have pictures on them. You don't want to touch those at all. This is the section where that's done. You can do things like if you have the heated seats, you can use that to turn those on and off, so you don't don't have to go into the radio. So then if we scroll down, we can find buttons 3 and 4 and what the locked features are there. And then we can select continue. Once everything is filled out, this page will come up. It's basically an overview of everything that you've selected. If it all makes sense scrolling through it, go ahead and select flash. Then sit back, relax, and wait for it to finish. So look-wise, your flash may look a little different than this. However, it's going to have the same questions. All right, once done, it's going to take you to the home page that says the flash is complete. On here, you'll be able to find your installation guide, as well as the serial number and the firmware downloaded on your card. You can download a wallet card for your steering wheel controls and the exterior buttons. We'll go ahead and select download to take a look at the install guide. First up on the installation instructions is going to show you how to get your car apart. Next, they're going to explain how to remove the factory radio. And then lastly, the page we're looking for is the wiring diagram for the car. On this page, it's going to give us our information about the brain box and these two cables here. Now, these two cables here come in the box for the RR. They are not in the main box with the other wiring harness. And those two cables are in the power bag here, which is a 4-pin connector that has a blue, white, black, and red. And then the second one is for backup sensor noise, and that is going to be in the second bag. That is going to be a 3-pin connector that has a red, white, and black. The rest of these you're not going to use. You can set those aside. I like to go ahead and plug these into my brain box because they are small and you don't want to lose them because the unit will not work without them. The bigger one with the 4-pin, this is the main data connection. Without that one, it's not going to be able to talk to your radio. Now, if you want a copy of your instruction manual, obviously you can go ahead and print it or just keep your browser open and look at it as you go through the install. Naturally, when I have this information here in front of me, the first thing I like to do is just go over my harnesses to see, do I need the OBD2? In this case, I do. How many plugs are going to be plugged into the brain? In this case, it looks like there's 4 here, plus the speaker, plus this. That makes 7. It is showing me on the kit that there will be a harness that plugs into that. And of course, if I have a backup camera, it's going to show that harness in there. Let's go ahead and unbox this radio and get the bracket mounted in. For this particular radio, this does a lot of neat things. It'll do front camera, it'll do crash cam if you buy the Kenwood, it'll do backup cam, it has dual USB, it does not have HDMI, it's got a Bluetooth/Android Auto, Apple CarPlay microphone, and a GPS antenna. For the Kenwoods, make sure you grab these screws out of the bag. These are a fine thread screw. On the brackets themselves, you see an R, you see an L, and this is going to mount with this at the top. If you look closely, you see these little tape measure looking things, and what those are designed for is when you put the screws in and you figure out the right depth, you can match them up on the other side. With this style bracket, what you want to do is go ahead and put the screws in and guess at first where you think they might need to go. I like to start with the radio pushed all the way back as much as possible. We'll go ahead and put these in. The reason why that is these brackets aren't attached to the face. So once we get these screws in, we're going to have to go into the car and adjust them so that it all lines up. I recommend doing this step before you work on the harness and get all the stuff piled up into the dash. You want to do this when it's easy to get the radio in and out. All right, let's take these in the car and line them up.
Now, because we've modified the dash, we need to go ahead and modify the kit a little bit. We're going to notch the 2 corners on the outside so that they'll clear the dash when we go to put it back in. Slide the kit into place, and it's still sticking out too far, so we'll go ahead and pull it back out. We got it in 2. Let's head over to the bench and I'll show you how far we had to come with it on this particular radio.
So this particular radio actually will invert as well as go out. As you can see, this commonly happens with this. What we've had to do is line this silver up with the very front of the radio, so that we had to push this thing all the way in to get it to look the way we wanted. Let's move on to the wiring harness. There's 2 peripherals that are being used that need to get mounted. One is the OBD2 reader, and the other one is this little speaker here. This is pretty easy. It's just gonna plug right in and run over to the radio. This one, well, a little bit more difficult. What you wanna do is find a nice spot where it attaches here or attaches here and fires down into the footwell. I'm gonna head over to the car and take a look real quick and figure out where we wanna put this. So one of the big complaints I had the last time we did one of these was that I turned the volume down way too low and I couldn't hear my backup sensors. So I want to make sure that I don't have that problem this time. So looking underneath here, there's this flat area right there that this will stick to, like this, and that'll allow me to hear all those sensors and keep that functioning. Right here is my OBD2. We'll just run that over to the radio. Now in the bag with the speaker is this plug here that has a 2-pin to 4-pin adapter. That has to do with this connector right here on the RR. This is a newer RR. This was for a 1st gen RR, so we're not gonna need this. The difference between the speaker plug and the OBD2 adapter is that the speaker actually plugs into here. The OBD2 is going to plug into this little pigtail right here that has the brown, yellow, brown, red on it. And then this long guy coming off this is what's gonna plug into the kit. The wiring harness is taped up and all set, ready to go. You can just easily solder your wires onto here, connect in your speakers, and rock and roll. I like to verify that that's how I want my harness to go before I go ahead and do this. So I'm gonna head back into the car and see where all this stuff is gonna sit, because I may want to redo it. There's 2 plugs that are going to plug in, the main harness here and the air conditioning plug. One of the things we've done, because we have put multiple radios in here, is normally this is all plastic in here, but we've removed this area all through here and down through the center. The reason why we've done that is because there is a ton of room back here, as well as to the left and right, for this big harness to go into. It's just as simple as cutting along the top of this and all the way up and doing the same on this side, and then that panel will come right out. This guy here will plug into this, and then this will all tuck down into here. We have our main harness here. This is going to, we have room for that. Okay. As much as I love redoing these harnesses, this one is gonna work just the way it is. Now I am gonna remove some of this tape, because even though I like the way this is laid out, don't want this tape on there. Now I am going to retape the harness, and for that I am going to be using exterior Tessa tape. It does handle the temperatures here in Florida a little better. So we have the same basic layout that we had from them, it's just my way. I've gone ahead and plugged this in just so we could get everything zip tied where it needs to go. Now we want to remove it, because this is the last thing that gets plugged in, not the first. We're going to get this plugged into the car, this plugged into the radio, and then this gets plugged in. We got a bunch of wires here on this end that need to get connected to this harness, and that's where the tricky part comes in. In the box are these 2 guys here. They are for if you have the premium sound system that has the outboard amplifier. What you do is you plug these into here, and then now you can go ahead and you connect your speaker wires up to here, and then what that will do is that will allow you to plug directly, nice and easy and simple, into that factory amplifier and have no problems. If you don't have the factory amplifier, what the instructions advise you do is to cut these off right here, just like you have open speaker wires right here, and then connect this harness up to here, matching color for color, and it'll work that way as well. The third option is, what if you're going to be adding amplifiers, in which case you're not going to be using the speaker wires at all. That's the option that we're actually putting in this car, because it has an aftermarket amplifier in it. So we are actually just going to unplug these all together and not use them at all. There are 8 speaker wires on here, and they are color coded. Let's go over them real quick, just so you know. White is driver's front, gray is passenger front, green is driver's rear, and purple is passenger rear. There's a solid and a stripe. The solid is positive, the stripe is negative. These also have those same corresponding colors on them. Now that leaves all these wires here that we need to contend with. First thing I do is level them all off. And what we have is a yellow constant 12 volts, a black ground, a green emergency brake wire, a purple-white reverse wire, a blue-white remote turn-on. Even though you don't have an amplifier or hooking up an amplifier, make sure you hook that up. A pink vehicle speed sense, or VSS, an orange illumination illumination, have a red accessory. On this particular Kenwood harness, along with our 8 speaker wires that we're not going to be using, there's a purple white wire to match up, pink wire to match up, a light green that matches up, and orange white is the illumination that is going to go to the orange. Have a blue yellow, which is the steering wheel control wire. Steering wheel controls are done via the data plug, the little 4-pin connector over here that we had that had the red, black, white, blue. So we're not going to be hooking that up. The remote turn on we will be hooking up. This does not have a power antenna connection, so the solid blue wire in here is not going to be connected. It has the yellow, it has the red, and it has the black. Then it has these 2 green wires, one with white stripe, one with red stripe, and they say cam on there. They're for a Kenwood add-on camera, so we can set those aside. So what that leaves us with is all the wires that match up to there are here, and the only one that's different is that orange, white. So all we have to do now is solder these together. Normally at this point what I would do is I would cut these all to length and shrink them down, and this has a little white resistor in it for their speed sense. I would move that in closer to here so that it would all be perfect. However, this radio is a demo. When we're done with this, this has to go on our display board. So Paul has asked me not to ruin this harness and attach it to here. We're going to just hook it up but not trim them to length. Well, as crazy as this is going to make me, it'll make Paul happy that we didn't cut up his plug, so it's all good. That means that we're all set and ready to get this into the car. I'll join you over there and we'll plug this in first. When you're looking at the plug, there is a big pin side and a little pin side. So when you're looking at the car plug, just line those 2 up and push them together, and then it will snap in place. Grab your white air conditioning plug on the bottom here, snap that into place. Now you can go ahead and tuck those into the dash out of the way. Grab the OBD2 connector and plug that in. The next step we want to do is plug our radio in. On the back of the radio, there's going to be this plug right here and this input right here. Those are for the 2 cables that we took out of the box earlier. The one that had the aux jack on it and then the little 4-pin. Now, most manufacturers do provide you with both of those inputs on the back of the radio. However, Pioneer does not. For Pioneer, you will be plugging that aux jack looking cable into the actual aux jack. Once you have everything plugged into the back of the radio, now you can go ahead and plug in the RR. Don't forget to add in your speaker, because that's not going to be in your bundle. Tuck that into the dash. Now remember that you need to keep this cable out here, which is for the front bezel. Work your way gently, pushing the radio into place. Cable needs to come out of this top right area here, so make sure that's where it's at. Now we can go ahead, I'll hold it, you have the screwdriver on your side. You can just do 1 screw if you like, because we want to do a quick test. Okay, well the plug plugs in at a 90 degree, so you have to bend the plug and work it into place right here. So as you can see, that angle, it's covered by the plastic. It takes a second or 2 to get that thing plugged in. If you can get to the home screen like this, you're doing pretty well. We'll come over here to our vehicle information. We have tire pressure, and it looks like I have a low one. Now, one of the things that's really cool about this is it will tell you if you have a check engine light, and I just so happen to have a check engine light. So I'm really looking forward to pressing that and seeing what it'll do for me. Now, up on the top here, we have the gauges. I'll automatically go to that. I want to make sure my lock and unlock work, and they do. An air conditioner would be nice, and there's the air conditioner. We'll adjust the fan speed, and we'll adjust our temperature. So we're good there. Everything works, we're good. We just can put our 2 fingers right here. Once we have it lined up, and just give it a little push. Push here on the top, push here on the bottom. The kit is in and looking sexy. And the last thing we want to do is go ahead and replace our 2 screws in the bottom. So for those of you that have Camaros, this is the view of what you're going to be looking at now every time you turn over and look at your radio. It does tuck up in there really nice. It keeps the gapping that the original radio has, so it's in there tight. You do lose those knobs. It does feel like something is kind of missing there, However, this does look really sharp. I like it. I like it a lot. I like this. So now that the install is done, we've actually had a couple days since we've put it in. Now what we'd like to do is show you some of the features that are unique to this installation. So one of the cool things about this particular radio is this home screen and the ability to move these widgets around. So like you can hold here, if you want to swap up your navigation system, you can move things around. So you can actually customize the layout. I really like this a lot. We can drop that back there. As you can see, we can have all kinds of fun. These buttons across the top, you have this 1 through 4 that we talked about. The reason why they're there with this is like if I wanted to make a fast button just to go to my navigation, I could do that. And also what they're gonna be really cool for is there's an RR2 coming out. And when that comes out, these will actually be programmable switches to turn other things on. Let's say like under dash lighting or rim lighting or wheel well lighting, or to turn on some other feature in the car. Now we have the fan buttons right here. If we hit the fan up, it's gonna go ahead and display our AC controls. So we can tap here. We can also hit climate here and access them as well. So if we want to change our temperature, we have the slider here to do that. We can turn on max AC, drag it down. Gauges. Now you have gauges 1 and gauges 2. If you hit menu, setup, AV, scroll down to OEM setup, you have Maestro features, gauges, select gauges. Over here you see preset 1 and preset 2. Center gauge, you can decide what you want it to be. You want to do 0 to 60. You can come over here and you can select your units. You can show your history, so you can have your 0 to 60 history. Then you have your top gauge right here, and there you have units. So you can build your own gauge cluster. And then when you go to it, boom, on this gauge cluster here, I have my 0 to 60. I have my intake, my coolant temperature, my RPMs. So I get to build this whole cluster the way I want it. My lock and unlock are right here. If I hit home, I can get back to this main screen. Another cool feature, we'll go back into menu, setup, go to AV, we'll go to OEM settings, we go Maestro features, vehicle information. Now on this page right here, this is actually for troubleshooting, because you can go in here and you can see your door alerts on and off, so that when you open the door, it shows you this. If you don't want that, you can turn that on and off. This has the TPMS status. We can come in here and they're all okay. We can change the units, check engine alerts on and off, go back to information. Here's a check engine light on if we tap it. This is the code. You can hit reset and it can try to reset it. This one won't. Parking assist. So this is parking assist interrupt. Disabled, enabled in reverse, enabled on detect. I have it set up for enabled on detect. So now when I have it in reverse, Fernando's walking behind the car. I could see what sensor is getting tripped. Now one of the cool features about the radio itself is up here it has this spectrum analyzer. If I tap that, it'll automatically take me right to the EQ. Now in vehicle settings, can activate all the settings that were built into the factory radio. I can go through and turn those on and off. Chime and turn signals. I can turn up and down the volume. Maestro module, diagnostics, OEM systems. This is for troubleshooting what could possibly be wrong with what's going on in the car. We can come in here and these numbers are, if let's say the air conditioner stopped doing what it was supposed to, these numbers are what I can give to iData and they'll be like, okay, that's right, that's wrong. So they've actually built in their own diagnostic system into the system, and now when we're trying to troubleshoot it, we actually have the ability to give them what we're looking at. That's a really cool feature. Parking brake on and off. Parking brake is off. Parking brake is on. Foot brake is off. Foot brake is on. Key position is in ignition. Illumination is on. So these are all, we can see what the radio is seeing and try to figure out if there's something wrong with the data bus now. And these are features that like you didn't even know were there and you will never use, but if there's ever a problem, they're here for us to help figure that out. One of the cool new things about this radio is when you're in the menu setup, whether it's in setup for stereo or setup for audio, now they're on the same page. So before you'd have to exit setup and go to audio, now you can toggle between the two. Something they introduced last year is this auto memory feature. So now after you go ahead and set up your full EQ, you don't have to exit back out into setup. They've gone ahead and added it in here. One of the other things that you can do with the Kenwood is drag and drop your icon. So if you want your disc to be one of your top 4, you simply just drag it here. When you hit X, now they'll appear here. This one does have an eject button. And the gapping is really nice all the way around it. So those are some of the features that we thought were pretty cool and we should talk about them. Now let's go back to us in the bay. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks for watching this episode of Car Stereo Lab. If you'd like to know more about this radio, I'll go ahead and put a link to iData in the description down below. They also have a nice video cartoon rendition thing of how this whole dash assembly comes apart if you'd like to watch that. Otherwise, Fernando, if you please.
On to the next one, guys.
Exactly. Have a nice day and we'll see you later next time.
Bye.